Yo, what up, Donald? How you doing, buddy? Hope your day's going well. Let's see. Just gotta share this on Twitter, and then we'll be good to go. Oh, you know what we're watching today. No music today. No music. Let me see. Okay, post has been created. Good on YouTube. Okay, we're good. Hey, Murdoch, what's up, man? How's your day going? Or your day? How's your morning going? Okay, we're good to go. Oh, nice. You're graduating. I assume you're graduating college. Am I correct in this? Am I correct? Let's see. What is... Where are all these freaking videos? Yeah, when I had to graduate, I had to. You have to wait to walk, till like May. Like every spring is this ceremony. So if you finished in December, you had to like pretty much sit on your ass. Sit on your ass with your fingers up your butt and just waiting for the ceremony because I mean you still got your diploma. It's weird because like they gave me a diploma, like they gave me a little miniature diploma. I don't know if they're gonna do that for you. I don't know if that's a thing or maybe my school's the only thing that did that. They give me like a wallet size diploma, so I could like show it to anybody I wanted, which is like cool. It's like a weird thing. Let me find these libertarian videos because I have a bunch. Okay, yeah, we got a bunch here. Okay, let us begin. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. Oop, kissing the mic. Malay Gamer, what's up, buddy? Yeah, I saw that Twitter video. I saw that Twitter video of the cop like literally holding a guy's bag, like, you broke the law. You're eating. I got nothing else to do, so I'm gonna bother you. All right. Let's begin with more libertarian nonsense. I hope you guys aren't tired of it, cause I'm not. I see the video getting arrested for having. Wasn't that a while ago, Donald? Wasn't that like a while ago with the churro thing? I kind of remember that. It's like ringing a bell. There's too much nonsense going on. The churro stand. Yeah, she was like, it was something like somebody was helping out somebody else because they lost like all their shit at their stand or something like that, and they got arrested for like trying to help somebody. Something weird like that. I don't know if this is the same video or I don't know. He's crazy. All right, this libertarian calls into debate defunding roads, making Walmart pay for them, and other super hot takes. All right, let's see.
Calling from a 631 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Dan. I called in a couple of years ago to talk
Well, this guy's gonna be fun already.
about libertarianism and that. So I thought I'd call in about that again because I've been catching up on some of your.
The face Sam makes every time he hears the word "I'm a libertarian" is just like internally I'm sure he's like lit up, but externally he's just like, this again. You gotta do this again.
Yeah, your videos on YouTube with these, debates and that.
Right.
So you had one about a year ago with a guy that forgot why he called in.
See where the guy. Yeah, but dude, like, leave the guy alone. Like, he's just eating. Like, he's like, it's illegal to eat. Like, dude, he's just eating a sandwich. Like, he's not. It's not like he's spilling all over himself. That's a weird thing, dude. If that's a law, that's a weird fucking thing. I want to hear explanation for paying Walmart.
While I was talking to you.
That
And
happens
I was
with
watching
libertarians. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said something very interesting towards the end of that one, though. You said that Walmart, gets more out of the state-funded infrastructure than the rest of us do, and that Walmart would go out of business if it weren't for, this interstate highway system that the government, takes care of for them. So, I'm thinking, isn't that two birds, one stone? You save the money and you get rid of Walmart in the process. So, yeah, what's the issue there?
So you're suggesting that if we get rid of the whole road system, we'll get rid of Walmart. Well, I mean, I may have been using Walmart as an example, but it would also be the case for smaller stores too and smaller operations. And it also would make it hard for you. Let's say you had to travel to a job or go to the hospital and needed to go on the highway. It would make it also difficult for you to get your mail. So I think you may have been taking it just a little bit too narrowly. I think I was making like a point that I was hoping would illustrate things.
But, I mean, the kind of, local roads, like to get mail or whatever, those are easily affordable by, I'm not necessarily advocating private roads or whatever, but I think that's a perfect instance of where that could be, in theory, like they have the resources to handle that.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's assume, now, where do you live again? You don't have to tell me exactly, but I mean, just the general
address, please.
The city or the state?
I'm currently living in upstate New York.
Okay, so let's just say you live in, let's say, Utica, okay? I don't know if you live in Utica or Elmira, okay? But somebody wants to send you a letter from Florida. Now, they could fly, but you also know that, these airports are not privately built, right? They're built by the government.
Right.
Right. So they're going to have to fly via a government-built airport to another government-built airport, certainly with federal subsidies, if not the full bill. And then they get into like JFK, or even if they get into Albany, they're going to have to take a highway to get to Utica or to Elmira. So you could just have local mail, and that you wouldn't run into that problem. But I think you might be getting a little bit too narrowly fixated on the funding for the highways. What is your overall point? That we just don't need a federal government?
What I'm saying is, just no subsidies.
I really wish they would show a picture with the person talking. I really just, it would just not. It wouldn't take away from the conversation. I just for my own self pleasure, I would love to put a face to the voice of these callers.
Toward transportation. This transportation should always be paid for by like take Walmart for example. If they had to pay for the weights that they're moving, if they had to fund that themselves, they'd go out of business. Like you
That's
said.
correct.
And
And they would never actually
get-
be able to fund it up front either, would they?
Oh, of course not. No.
Right.
No.
So what's the point here now? That you want to get rid of Walmart and the highways.
Where are you
Right.
going to
I
get your
think two
jetpack
birds,
then?
one stone.
What's that?
You know?
No, I
Two
know we're getting
birds,
two
one
birds, one stone.
stone.
No, I get that concept, but you're not just taking out two birds. You're taking out a whole flock of birds. You're taking out the trees. You're taking out the bird baths. You're taking out a lot of other things besides the birds. You understand that? It's not just.
I don't know. I mean,
Walmart is not the only people who need highways.
given that the highways are here, what I'm saying is if you just funded them entirely with tolls on, 18 or 16 wheel trucks, and then because those are the ones that do 90% of the damage that needs repair.
Okay, so
You
you're
smother-
calling me because you're suggesting that we should have higher toll rates. Maybe we could do it.
Sayer Susie. I assume that's how you say your name. One Punch Man. Oh no, that's not One Punch Man. That's Avatar, right? I think that is. What's up, man? How you doing? Daryl Perry is the face of Libertarian. That's the guy who screams, "Hold on, Sam." Yeah, that's the guy we saw. That's the guy that said, how we get around is through jetpacks. Emily, how are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're well.
Do a gas tax. How's that?
Well, the problem with gas taxes, there's two problems with them. One is that the relationship between gas consumption and weight is linear, whereas the relationship between weight and damage to the roads is exponential. But the other problem is that gas consumption, perversely, is something that it takes more gas to travel on the worst roads. So you would actually be charging the people who get the shoddier construction more.
Oh, it is One Punch Man? Oh. I thought I saw like a blue arrow down like his forehead. Okay, fair enough. I was close the first time. I was right the first time. You're doing great. That's good to hear, Emily. That's good. Keep it up. Keep your head up. And keep going, man.
For the privilege of having the worst
All right. So
construction.
let
for
me
both of them.
let me just. I mean, I know you've been saving up for a year for this, but I mean, what exactly are we arguing here? Are you're arguing in favor of tolls, and is this a
Weight-based toll. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So let me just step back and just to take like a
Say
30-foot view of what's going on here.
Weight-based tolls?
You called in a year ago. You've been looking at my material. You've waited to call in, and you want to have an argument with me about weight-based tolls. I mean,
I'm just saying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, your argument about Walmart that you made a year ago is really a perfect argument.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, this is actually a drawing that somebody else did. They are commissioning me to pretty much redraw them in their own layer and everything and get them ready for like animation. So somebody already did all these. I just have to retouch them and pretty much HDify them, I guess you could say, because they're just a little sketchy and try to get them like looking a little better. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. I mean, it's a commission, so it's taking priority over the Corin thing that I was doing before. But hopefully we'll finish it today. This is a squirrel that I redid for her. Little chubby squirrel called Crack the Squirrel. These are fungus. I think that's a drug. Fungus or something. Can someone confirm this or not? But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing right now. And we're listening to Libertarians debate Sam Cedar. So I'll give you guys something, while I'm doing something. You know what I'm saying?
Argument again.
Wage. Oh, he said wage-based toll. I thought he said weight-based toll. I was like, what?
The government subsidizing these things. Because if the government didn't subsidize them, if everyone had to pay their own share. But that would be a perfect way to, sort of strangle Walmart, Target.
No, but
all
wait a
this
second.
stuff.
Why is
but
he
wait a
trying to
second. You
destroy
understand-
businesses?
Okay, so, but first off, there are bigger tolls for trucks on the highways. I mean, you must be aware of that, right? If you have multiple axles, you get charged a different rate. But putting that
To an
aside,
extent, but
right? No, okay, I get it. And I will concede, I am not prepared to have a full-throated argument for or against increasing tolls and how you would go about doing that. But there's also other more, I think, direct ways in which you can if you want to deal with the issue of monopolies, you can do that. I'm not quite clear on what you are. And I think gas taxes may not be the most efficient way of providing for federal subsidies, but for highways. But I mean, I think, there's other benefits to gas taxes, right? In that you're cutting down carbon emissions, and pollutants, which society pays for in other ways. There's always going to be externalities, and that we're paying for. But I don't know what your argument is beyond this narrow question of how we should impose tolls on trucks.
I'm just saying that no taxpayer money should be going to fund transportation, because that way you're basically just propping up.
So you realize you'd have
Walmart
no
and
trains.
Target.
You'd have no trains either. You'd have no passenger trains, except for maybe in the Northeast Corridor.
Well, I don't think any tax money should go to those. I mean, again, given that the railroads have
so
been
you
constructed-
understand that you would have no passenger rail but for like the Northeast Corridor and maybe some segments on the coast.
I guess. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not,
Whatever
I guess
people
that's
are
true.
willing to pay
And
for
if you would have no bus systems, local bus systems.
Well, wait, why not? Why wouldn't there be local bus systems?
So you're,
I mean, if people are paying the price of the bus tickets or whatever, I don't see how they couldn't
Dude,
fund.
they don't, there are no public transportation systems that fully pay for themselves.
Right. So, that's what's got to be changed, is just only have public transportation that people are willing to, pay for.
Right. Okay.
I mean, the end game.
So in other words,
the end
so
game
let me just reiterate what you said in a different way that is actually more reality based. There will be no public transportation in any meaningful way.
Perhaps not. I don't know the numbers.
Do you take the bus?
Rarely.
Right.
I mean, if I'm going somewhere local, I walk.
Okay.
And, going from one town to another, then, yeah, bus.
Yeah. All right, well, X that out.
This might harm growth. Not that that's the main.
All right. Well,
worry, but-
listen. Peter Thiel is here. He has a question for you.
Hello, how are you, young man? Hi. It's been excruciating to listen to you, but no offense. Sam seems to love this, so I indulge him before I bankrupt this entire disgusting little show. But I did have a question for you. Are you Greg's son?
Who?
Greg, are you his son? He's a disgusting man who calls this show.
What up, Lila?
Okay. Peter
I
Thiel
don't
is.
think so.
All
You don't
Peter,
think-
this is why Peter Thiel's.
You don't know if you're
You're not.
Greg's son. I hope not.
Well, listen. I appreciate the call. I'm a little bit backed up today. I want to encourage you to call. Don't wait a year.
He doesn't think
Wait,
so.
wait, hold
Bless
on,
his
hold on,
heart.
Hold on. Don't wait a year to call in again. But do go and just run the numbers a little bit. If you think that there should be no subsidies for public transportation, run the numbers a little bit and call back and make an argument to me why there should be no public transportation. Okay?
All right.
And it's Greg, your father.
I mean, it's the taxpayers. It's not federal dollars, right? Locally, but you're talking about taxpayers. taxpayers also pay for the roads, right? I mean, even the local
I mean,
roads.
can we at least agree on the federal part of this? Can we at least
Probably
agree
not.
on that? The interstate.
Probably not. Probably not. But all right. But look, call back because I don't have that much time. But I appreciate it.
How old are you, young man?
No, stop it. All right.
I'm interested in blood. Shut up, Sam. You've never had blood in your life.
We'll talk to you
That's
later.
why you look like you're dying.
I appreciate the call. Thank you. Please.
That's why you look so disgusting and exhausted.
No,
I hate you so
all right,
much.
I'm going to take one more call. I got to get out of here I got to get out of here in 5 minutes. I got to take one more call. We're laughing because there's a tweet from a Jimmy Durr who says Hillbot at Sam Cedar defends Walmart over better weight-based toll roads. Shocker wants to kill local biz. At Majority FM, Matt Leck and Michael Brooks. So
it was weight based.
boy, I'm like in between a rock and a hard place here. You're calling from a 916 area code. You are the final call. Hi, folks. Sam.
No public transportation whatsoever. What? Do people really think this? Oh my god.
Let's go to the.
Let me see.
Sam, you're
Okay, so stop me if we've heard this one before. Libertarian Gone Wild after losing party member to Sam. I don't know if we've. These titles are kind of blending in together, but let me know if we've heard this before. But Congress, yeah, Jenks running for Congress. That's alleged, right? He hasn't officially announced, but it's like pointing to. That's interesting.
Phones. John from California. Welcome to the program, John.
Hi, this is John from California.
Hi, John.
And I was calling in because a fellow member of our Libertarian Party had turned Democrat by listening to your show. She said, yeah, he seems to have a pretty good grasp on his economic situation. So she had me listen in. And I'd like to debate you on everything you've ever said at all. It just seems to me like you have a superficial economic grasp of all that's going on. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, when has regulation ever worked? You always seem to say when has free market never.
He's gonna ask him if he has diarrhea. $100. Oh man.
Worked. When has regulation ever worked?
When has regulation?
Go ahead and give me any example.
Do you have diarrhea right now?
Oh my god, I watch way too many of these, dude. Holy shit. Maybe we did see this? I don't know, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it anyway. Hold on. I need to. Where is? I have a folder of a bunch of references to videos for this Sam Cedar episode for Secular Talk. Where is it? What the fuck, man? Where is it? Hold on. I gotta find this folder. Too much shit on my computer. I should do. I'm gonna do spring cleaning for your house. I need to do like spring cleaning for my fucking computer. Got folders everywhere. Where the fuck is this folder? God damn. Here it is. Where is this folder? Segments. At 2:50 at beginning. Hold on. I need to see if I have this video already.
Liberty, liberty.
No, at begin.
Hey, are you tired of
No, I don't think we have seen this one. Okay, we're watching this one right now. Maybe we'll add to it. Holy crap, dude. You don't listen to Sam Seder Live Rising? Yeah, Hill Rising's pretty good. I've been like checking their stuff out. I've been recommended a lot of their stuff. They're pretty good. Sam Seder's pretty good too. He kind of like toes the line between like, Trump said something stupid, let's make fun of him. And then he talks about more intellectual stuff. So he like kind of toes that line. He does a little bit of both, which I'm not really a fan of. I'm not a fan of like, oh, Trump is stupid. Like, let's laugh at his tweets. Let's laugh at this thing he did. I get why you do it. It gets clicks and shit like that. But that's not that interesting to me. But if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you listen to like all the libertarian debates he's had, or just like come hang out here. We usually play them while I work. It's fucking hilarious, dude. Like the things that people say. All right, let's continue.
Now?
Well, no. I'd like to talk on an economic, philosophical.
You asked me a question.
Level with you, really.
It's good to have you, Sarah Susie. I think that's how you say it, right? I think I'm saying it right.
You asked me a question. When has regulation ever worked? And I'm asking you a question.
Yes, in a historical period, economically, or any period during government policy, when has regulation ever worked?
Well, are you suggesting that we didn't have massive economic growth from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s?
Yeah, Crystal Ball's pretty
I'm
good.
saying that's when we had.
She was really good on Bill Maher when like she was the only like voice of reason in that discussion. She was really good.
Of the Fed involved in our economics, and it gave.
Well, but regulation was working.
Yes.
And regulation has nothing to do with economic growth because we had it then, didn't we?
Economics has nothing to do with. Sorry, repeat the question.
Wasn't a question. You asked me, when have we ever had a booming economy with a regulatory state? And I just answered you.
In the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
I would say that we could have had a bigger economic growth without any regulation. But yes, we did have an expansive period between those periods.
Well, I've answered your question. Do you have any others?
No, that doesn't answer my question.
Okay, so
Because
maybe you got to repeat your question to me again because obviously I didn't understand it.
When has regulation ever worked economically or philosophically or anything?
Okay, well then if you're going to include philosophically in this, let me go back to my first question to you. Do you have diarrhea? If the answer is no,
I don't
it is
have
because we have regulations that make sure the water that you get out of your tap is clean.
AS31, what's up, man? Yeah, we got a bunch of new people. We got the old people. We got a lot of people tonight. Yeah, she was on Bill Maher. Crystal Ball on Bill Maher. I think Kyle might have done a segment about it. I'm not too sure, but the YouTube's is quite the field of content. So go check it out.
I live in Sacramento, and I live on the outskirts, and I have my own well. So I don't know. That doesn't apply for me.
Okay.
I don't have fluoride in my water. I get my water tested on a daily basis. So that argument is debunked. And I think
okay. All right, let me ask you this.
Water systems is
Do
not
you,
really
in
that
your
great.
rural
Side-effect
area,
system could have probably
hold on
regulated
for a
the water
second.
for less of a cost.
John, in your rural area, do you have electricity?
Do I have electricity?
Yes. I mean, do you generate your own electricity?
Yes, we have electricity through a municipal utility district.
Yes, and do you think that that is regulated? Do you think that regulations...
It's regulated on a local level per taxpayer and per voters around here. Yeah,
okay,
we regulated ourselves.
You got to get more
it's
specific.
Not regulated
so in
on
other words, for you, what you're talking about is when is
it's
federal
regulation?
regulation?
Us in our community have levied together. We've levied our money, and we've passed this initiative, and it's working.
Right. Okay, so what you're talking about is federal regulation. You got to get more specific here because you keep changing the goal. So when is federal regulation?
No, you can give me any specifics you want as where regulations work, but we're regulating ourselves.
Oh, you guys are completely autonomous. There's no state regulation on your utility?
I'm sure there's state power laws or whatever that apply to the utility districts, but we as voters get to set prices and whatever else is fair. This is SMUD.
This is what?
SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utilities District.
Okay, and you don't think they're subject to any federal regulations?
Going, though.
Okay, all right. Well,
this also could be a private company.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bunch of investors getting together for a product.
Right. And they're not subject to any federal regulations, as far as you know.
We're not. Your argument is that we're not. Yeah, of course we have to apply under federal regulations. I'm sure some kind of Securities Exchange Commission Act and the Department of Corporations and under state federal law. But I'm saying that these regulations at this state and federal law have done nothing but hurt us. I mean, they've imposed more cost on us as SMUD, as the utility payer.
Okay, so what about planes? Do you have any planes that are falling in out of the sky? I mean, do you perceive like FAA regulations?
So FAA could be organized as a private institution too. I'm not saying let's privatize all government because I'm libertarian. I believe in limited government.
Limited government.
In the case of a free market economy, well, let's use the case of planes. In the case of planes, obviously, you can't have competition in the airs without regulations. They couldn't regulate themselves. Is that your argument? We need the government?
Yeah.
Because why? I don't understand. Because planes are going to crash into each other if we don't have the government. That's your argument? If we don't have the FAA, they're just going to stupidly crash into each other.
Well, no, I think that if we don't...
I don't play Far Cry 5. I've never played the Far Cry games. I heard Far Cry 5 was good, though. But personally, I've never played those games. I hear 3 is really good. Like, there's a good story there with a good villain.
You don't think that they have a economic enterprise to protect their investment?
Whom? Who? I would say that the big industry players would basically say, we're going to get the right of way. And we're going to, the big player would probably monopolize it if they would be able to, if they would band together with no regulation.
Well, we're getting into semantics there, but I'd like to get back into any other libertarian argument.
Okay, well, you were the one who wanted to do regulation. You tell me.
An extensive period with non-regulation. I mean, I don't understand your point. You think more regulation is good?
I think...
and I would like to cite many cases where...
I don't think more regulation is good. I don't think less regulation is
yeah. Oh, yeah. Far Cry 5 was the religious cult one. It was very like, ooh, this is very close to home. Very religious, religious fundamentalists. It was very hit close to home. I remember that controversy when it came out.
It's good. I think that good regulations are good. That's what I think is good. I don't think regulations for the sake of regulations.
You seem to forget economic cases since the 17th century, starting with Adam Smith, that, quote, good intentions by the government end up hurting the people. You are so far gone on your economic policies. I don't understand where you think that regulation completes itself in the initiative.
That what? Regulation what? Completes itself in the initiative?
It's a good intention, but it never ends up doing what it's supposed to do.
Really? Never? You don't think it keeps our skies safe?
Subsidizing.
You don't think it keeps... I mean, I listen, yesterday I had...
There's no other privatized company we can go to.
I had, yesterday, I took a walk with my daughter along the Hudson River, which several decades ago was completely poisoned. But government regulation has cleaned it up.
Well, that's where me and you would agree as a libertarian. I see a lot of people on your show. Well, I'm not this kind of libertarian. I'm libertarian. So I believe in a limited government.
Okay, what does that mean?
Actually,
limited to what?
Corporations or private companies or whoever, the government pollutes the river, we should use the law system to enhance some kind of
Well, regulations are
regulations
laws.
under-
That is what the law system is. When the EPA,
That is what the law system is what?
what is the law system? What is that? I don't know what that is. What is when you say law system?
The
What is that?
court's in place, so I don't know if the Hudson. I'm on the West Coast. I'm in Sacramento, so I can cite new cases over here. But I'm sure all the court systems in America work the same. You can sue at a local level through tort reform.
And
You can sue
no,
at
it's not
a
tort reform that you sue
state
through.
level. You can sue
Tort-
at a federal level. I don't understand what your question is. The court's in place. I think we should still have.
Wait, did he really say I'm a real libertarian? Did he really say that? Did I miss it?
Right. The courts we have
If I missed it, I want to go back to it.
in place. Now, what do you think that they adjudicate based upon?
Adjudicate the makeup on probably previous cases. That's probably case law.
Case
And if
law,
there is no
and then
previous
there's
cases,
law.
That's how it works.
Statutory
you want to go over
law.
the law system with me?
Like you're not allowed to dump your stuff in the river anymore.
So I just
Oh my god, doing this while working with a drinking game on top of it, like I'd be on the floor like passed out. What would the rules be? It'd be like every time you hear I'm a real libertarian, you gotta like chug your beer.
just told you I agreed with limited government. But what's your question? We shouldn't be allowed to dump stuff in the river? Even if we had no EPA in place,
Oh,
somebody
okay.
dumping something in the river hurts the community as a whole, and they can get together and file a civil lawsuit, whether it's a tort and a civil lawsuit, or they used to be able
Are
to
you
do it
familiar with the
federally. But now
Cuyahoga
the
River?
EPA takes that right away.
Are you
and they
familiar
have
with the
to trust
Cuyahoga
the EPA
River?
to do that for them.
Are you familiar with the
The
Cuyahoga
EPA
River?
is sort of the government's
John.
representative of those people.
John, can you hear me? Are you familiar with the Cuyahoga River?
Are you bringing up different case by case, or what? I don't understand. Let's go on with the Hudson River. Let's complete your thought there, or
Well-
whatever you were trying to say.
Well, I can tell you that EPA regulations cleaned up the Hudson River. The Cuyahoga River, which was essentially one of the big
But you're
impetuses to
stating
the
that these
EPA,
little-
was
you're
a
stating these little
literally
incidences
on
where
fire.
The EPA has done great, and I agree. Hey,
Okay.
they could have done great there, and they've done great on the West Coast too.
Okay, so there's
But
some
let's-
regulation that
seem
you
to
don't have a
fail
problem
where
with.
they over-regulate, and they cause businesses to go down, which causes it's just regulation. You cite these little cases, but that's what I'm telling you. The intention
Well,
is
you
great.
asked me to
But let's
cite
see what the
an
EPA will
instance
come in
where
25 years.
regulation was good.
What's that?
See, John, here's why we're
The answer
talking.
for
Hold
solution
on for a
you,
second,
I
John.
think
Just
you need to
calm
read a
down.
little bit of Milton
John,
Friedman.
John, why don't you
Yeah, go
cite
ahead.
for me? Okay, I'll give you an opportunity, and I'm sure you can come up with one. I probably could come up with one. Can you cite for me a case where a business went under because of regulation?
Where businesses went under regulation.
Where a business went out of business because of regulation?
Sure. In California, the EPA passed the Clean Air Regulatory Law at state level. And what this did, it was a good idea. We took old machinery, old diesel trucks, and we added in kind of like a second catalytic converter. We've had a $3 billion decline in economy in California. $3 billion because of this regulation.
Now,
And,
how do you
as
determine
far-
that?
I don't have the statistics on how much it's actually cleaned up, but the intentions were good.
Well,
Now,
how
I
do you,
don't know if
wait,
you can
hold on, John,
calculate how many
John,
jobs 3 billion is in California, but that's a lot of
calm
jobs.
down, John. Where now? How did that work? How did California lose $3 billion because of the addition of a second catalytic converter?
How did California lose $3 billion? Well, it is economics, which you're not really that privy on when I'm talking to you. And I don't want to put you down, but
Wait, I'm sorry.
you-
Could you just repeat what you said?
when you
It's economics
add
that you're not that
second
privy on?
converters to old machinery, sometimes old companies, that's all they have is old machinery, and that'll put them out because it's not cheap to adhere to these smog laws.
Right. And
I don't see what your questioning is.
well,
How
I
many
was just
businesses
asking
went
where you
out?
got
$3 billion worth of revenue was lost.
$3 billion worth of
Do you
revenue.
want to divvy out specifically how it was lost and who it was lost from? I don't understand.
Well, yeah, I want you to substantiate your claim that $3 billion, the economy shrunk by $3 billion because of environmental regulations that
This
said you
was
got.
an article in Sacramento Business Journal, and it was an article about how it was basically on heavy machinery equipment, which this law targeted.
Okay, and
And
so,
so,
the Sacramento
I
Business
don't
Journal
understand
said that they
Business
caused.
Journal.
Okay, and did you do any more research after that? Did you see, like, for instance, how much?
$100 in Zimbabwean money? How the fuck do you have this, Lila? What the fuck's going on over there? What the hell is that? What does that mean? Yeah, why do you have that? Zimbabwe. I said Zimbabwe. Zambian. How the hell do you get Zambian money? What the fuck? The phone case of an artificial human skin. What the fuck? What are you guys on? Are you all drunk? What the hell? So gross.
I'm a
more-
libertarian. This is economic policy. I'm just citing stuff off the top of my head because that's where you wanted to bring this. So,
Right.
this isn't like a research policy. The EPA, you brought this up.
Right.
But
Okay.
I'm telling you what I know about the EPA. But I would be happy to cite more research I do know about bigger government agencies
Oh, please.
doing what they think is right and actually doing what's wrong. I mean, it's F.A. Hayek, any economist you want to look at, even to Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman. These people spell it out.
I was
Nobel
laying
Prize
around.
winners. I don't understand where your research has.
I guess you could exchange it for yourself. Can you exchange it for American and get some actual money? You're not drunk for one. No, look it up. Oh my god, artificial human skin. Why would you want to have a phone? What? I need to look this up. What the fuck? Phone case with artificial human skin. Could be more useful than creepy. What the fuck am I looking at? Skin on as a prototype of an actual interface. What the fuck? What is wrong with people? It's like a hunk of flesh. I've seen enough. Holy shit, I've seen enough. That was really weird. What the fuck, man? That's really creepy. It's like you put Play-Doh on the back of your phone and you just like kind of just play with it. It looks like silly putty. Murdoch, you sick fuck. You would think that's cool. So you can like pinch it and be like, I'm pinching. Feels good to pinch. I'm essentially pinching myself, or something that represents flesh on my phone. It's weird. It's just weird. Yeah, Don. I've been trying to take a drink break actually. Like I've been trying not to drink every week, which I have been. Fucking helps me think clear. That's just me. Let us continue. Thank you for scarring me tonight, Maleo Gamer, with that piece of information.
Rob there.
All right, well, no, well, you want to talk about
they
the
like
other...
to criticize things like the welfare system and bigger issues we should be talking about here,
All right, well,
rather than you trying to cite two things that the EPA did on the West Coast.
okay, well, why don't you tell me what it is that you want to... well, we can talk one more topic. We've got time for one more topic. What is it that you want to... where do you want to plant your flag here?
Well, you know, you drew away a liberal. I mean, you drew away a libertarian to a liberal, and we're pretty close on some issues. I think, you know, especially family or whatever, you should be able to choose what you want. But I think you really misportrayed. She specifically told me that economic policy is just better than libertarians. Yeah. Regulation will bring about the things we want, and I just was kind of hoping you had an example of that.
Well, I cited them. Like we have a clean river here in the Hudson is now clean. Less smog in California, less asthma for kids, less medical expenses borne by the state, a healthier environment.
You know, hold on. I'd like to stop you. You're stating these little specifics. I'm stating a government as a whole.
I don't.
Just your argument is flawed. You're stating little points and you're misconstruing the argument. I would like you to stay on topic.
Okay.
What government that has regulated its people to the point as we regulate ours has ever prevailed?
What government has regulated the people to the point that we're regulating ours has prevailed? Well, I guess ours.
Economic theory. That's what we're talking about, economics. Economic policy.
Okay, Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Europe. All of Europe.
Europe has failed completely. I don't know what you're playing at. That is so general. It's disgusting.
Well, you just asked me to list a bunch of governments.
Greece? Are you talking about Greece? Let's talk about Greece.
How about
Greece has overregulated
China
themselves.
or Singapore?
They have so much government they can't even pay for it. That is the economic reason that they are in the hole. That is what you're proposing. I don't know, Greek economics. We can look at anything else. What specifically are you saying about Europe?
Well, you asked me what governments have survived or prevailed. Japan. I mean, we probably...
Japan is, I don't know, Japan a government was created by our government, the Wilson Institute, in the early 1900s after World War II. So that's modeled off of Free Economic Institute, which I am trying to vote for.
It was modeled, after us.
You just said, wait a second.
We had big regulation.
Yes,
we had huge regulation. We created the Japanese government, dude.
Yeah, wait a second.
You create the jobs in government, Bill. Is that what you just said? That is so oxymoronic, and that statement is so false. It's unbelievable.
The statement was literally false, as in that's not what I said.
Are you funding jobs? Are you subsidizing private companies? How do you define that?
No. I think you just misinterpreted.
You start saying these words, and we're supposed to salivate like Pavlov's dogs, you know? Government creation of jobs. That is oxymoronic. Government doesn't create jobs. People create jobs.
Government doesn't create jobs. People create jobs.
Yes.
Well, who do you think is in the government?
Government does not create jobs. That is an absolutely 100% true statement. Government does not create jobs.
Really?
Examples of where government does create jobs.
You know, John, before you called in, John, while you were on the phone, John, just listen for a second. John, quiet for a second. You just said government doesn't create jobs, right?
Government does not create jobs, no.
I just read a piece from Josephine County in Oregon, where 23 of 29 deputies in Josephine County, sheriff deputies, had to be laid off because of federal funds that were cut off that were providing those jobs for those 23 sheriffs. And the other implications of that story is that a woman was raped because the sheriffs they didn't have anybody to send out to her. So don't tell me the government doesn't create jobs. Did you see in Oklahoma any of the...
You're citing a specific incident where a woman got raped somewhere, and now I'm supposed to celebrate like Pavlov's dog again. You're creating this one incident, and you're blowing it out of proportion because
Well, wait a second.
there's no there is no proof that these guys getting laid off caused this girl to get raped. And you're making that claim, you're making that leap, and I'm supposed to swallow it here. And act like this is a real conversation.
But don't even look at
But
the
anyways,
don't
what's the predicate of your question?
don't even look at the rape part. He just said that federal funding cut cost those 23 sheriffs their job. Just look at that. Forget the girl getting raped. How does that not prove that government
You're saying
creates
that's
jobs?
the cause of the girl getting raped is because the
This
sheriff...
government creates jobs, for Christ's sake! Go to the freaking learning annex! I can't take
Hey,
this!
guys, stop it. Stop it.
Okay,
John, let me
We need
apologize.
to live in a complete
Let me-
police state for everybody
John,
to
let
be
me
safe.
apologize.
That's the
First,
assumption
let
of
me
what you're saying.
apologize for how
You don't even
rude
need those 23
my
back
two
on the
producers
job.
just
We
were
need
to
more,
you.
according to you, right?
Let me just
That would
apologize.
have prevented the
You
lady
have
from being
destroyed
raped.
my meditation retreat effect, sir. This stupidity
John,
is
that's quiet. Stop,
overpowering.
stop. I'm going to cut your microphones. John, I apologize for how rude my producers were. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm just trying to wonder, though, like, where the thinking is. You're thinking that nobody gets raped where there's lots of police?
No, John, I'm sorry.
I'm
We've
wondering,
gotten
like,
off point.
what
I
is
obviously,
going on?
I shouldn't have brought that second part in. All I can tell you is that the sheriff's department says that they have cut 23 jobs from a 29-person sheriff's deputies force because of the cuts in federal funding. Let's just keep it on that terrain.
Okay.
Now, would you concede? I understand this is just a specific, and you want some type of
You have Marks as well from Dutchland? But you could like open up a currency shop, Lila.
broader, non-specific, non-tangible example. But just indulge me. In that instance, the federal government had created 23 jobs.
Or who?
What?
You're going to have to cite what you're saying. The government cut these 23 young gentlemen from the local
I don't know if they were
employment, right?
gentlemen. No,
So
the
that's local
federal government did cut
cutting
it. The federal
sheriff's
government
jobs. And
was
how are you trying
providing
to bring this
funds.
about?
Listen, okay, all right. I want you to write this down, okay, so that you can Google it. It'll be really easy.
I don't want to Google it. I just want to hear what you're saying.
All right. All right, you're going to have to listen now. The sheriff's department cut 23 of its 29 deputies because of cuts in the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act, which provided funding to this county to hire police officers and other county
Okay,
workers.
let's stop right there because we can break it down from what you're saying. 23 cops got fired. They hired them back on through some act or fund. That act and fund is paid by the taxpayer. So you really didn't create any jobs that's being subsidized. It's another subsidy. So that in and of itself, I can stop you right there. You don't even need to go any further.
So those aren't, what do
They're
you
not being
define as
funded out of
jobs?
thin air. They're being funded out of mine in your pockets. And it's
Right.
not such a bad thing to employ 23
But you know what?
cops.
You know what? I got news for you, John. I am being subsidized by the people who pay for this show.
What's being subsidized? Well,
You
excuse me,
see,
what's
here's
that?
John. All right, listen.
You're
The
trying
problem,
to
John,
bring in
quiet for a
local
second.
politics
Quiet for a second, John, because
or
I've
state
given you a lot of
politics
time.
and
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you go crazy, Emily. just doing what the woman wanted me to draw.
John, quiet for a second. The problem is that you simply have an ideological problem with taxpayers funding government and then government hiring people. You decide to say that that's not jobs, it's subsidies. This is a meaningless distinction to me, and you can take that for what it's worth. You can say that I'm an ideologue because I don't have a problem with taxpayers funding the government and then the government
let's not bring
hiring people
ideology
to
into
provide
this.
us services.
Where is the earmark? Where are the funds going for the 23 cops that they
ideologically,
cut?
you
Is
are
that
trapped.
Going somewhere else? Or is
You
that
are
going back to the taxpayer's pocket, which I guarantee you it's not? It's a mismanagement of government.
You, John, and I've muted you so that people know, you have an ideological problem with people paying taxes and the government redistributing that money to pay for police services, fire services, the FAA, the EPA, the FDA, all of these government agencies. You have an ideological problem with that, and so you decide that you're not going to define the people hired by that money as having jobs. Well, that's fine. You're just making up words. That's the problem. I'll give you the last word, John, but it's got to be quick. Go ahead.
Federal government should not be in charge of the police, the fire department, and, I don't know, civil servants within the local level. I think you're mistaking that. Somehow they get earmarked through certain funds.
Right.
I can concede that.
Yes.
But
All right.
that is controlled. Those sheriffs are elected at a local level.
Right.
And
Great last word, John. Got to jump now. Got to jump. But feel free, John, feel free to call back, but I got to let you go.
Where the money went
I got to let you go. Call back anytime, John, but I got to let you go. All right, I got to let you go, but I'll call back anytime. All right, I got to continue on with the show. Free market demands it.
Free market demands it. So this is a follow-up. Libertarian caller madness, the aftermath. It's like only 6 minutes.
I've never seen you two guys get as out of control as you got on that phone call. They were jumping out of their seats, folks. Just at, the thing is that when John called, and maybe this is my own sort of bias and prejudice, but he sounded like he was going he sounded at first like, maybe it was the timbre of his voice. I thought, here's a guy who sounds like he's going to have something smart to say. And what astonishes me about these people is they plan to call. They have these arguments, and then they fall apart within seconds and they don't give me specifics. Keep it general. Why? See, this is the problem with libertarians. They cannot deal with data. They cannot deal with the empirical truth. They cannot deal with specifics. They are trapped in an ideology that...
Oh, yeah, Michael Moore was in that clip, too. Which, like, when Bill Maher was talking about Amy Klobuchar, I'm like, oof. Oof. That is rough.
That says, I don't like something. And anything that doesn't comport...
Crystal, hold on. What's her name? Her last name's Crystal Bell? Crystal Bells. Yeah, Crystal Ball. I think her last name is Ball. This is an actual person. This is an actual person. Oh, man.
Report with that is wrong. Period.
Yeah, Bill is unwatchable now. Like, he used to be pretty good, but now he's just... He's part of that, like, scene that's, like, the left, like, when you say the left is, like, lost their mind with Trump, they don't know how to attack him. It's just, like, I think Bill Maher is one of them. I really do. It's hard to watch him. He's like, we need someone in the center. We need to be in the center. I'm like, dude, Hillary Clinton was, like, the ultimate centrist. That doesn't make sense. And he's like, oh, for Amy Klobuchar. And he was for Bernie, now he's against Bernie. So it's like, it's confusing. It's all over the place. I don't know. Yeah, Bill Maher was good around the Bush era. I didn't really watch him too much in the Obama era.
It's like listening to a creationist talk about the fossil record.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. I'm sorry.
That's why I say it's like a religion.
I enjoyed when you were giving him like a specific place as an example, and he would go, "Can we get more broad here?" And then you're like, "All right, Europe." And then he was like, "Can we get more specific?"
All right, let's go. We're gonna need the perfect palate cleanser. Don from Atlanta. Don, help me out here.
Sam, my man, I see what you're doing over there, brother. I have to tell you that I've gone through like a bit of an emotional roller coaster with that last caller.
Yeah.
Because when he started, I was like, oh, not another dumbass libertarian. But your genius is let these sons of bitches discuss and talk their own philosophy clear into the ground. What's so genius about it is this. If you let them talk long enough, you will see that they are basically two things: selfish anarchists, period.
I don't even think I don't think this guy's an anarchist. Anarchists, I find, generally have thought a lot more about what they're talking about. That they actually have
a classical term of anti-government or the destruction of of our society or of the government. These people, they're selfish in the fact that they don't want their money going to help people that they don't like. Period. That's it.
I think that's where it comes from. I mean, but this idea of I believe in limited government. All right, well, relative to what? Like I say, that limited government is a meaningless term. It means nothing. If this guy doesn't, well, I don't have a problem with the EPA because I'm for that. But
I'm for EPA because I drink water, but I'm not for programs to help pregnant women because I'm a dude and I can't get pregnant.
Right.
There it is.
Right.
I mean, but I really didn't call for that. But that guy was that goes in the archives. That dude is classic.
Yeah, I think we got to put a star next to that one.
I mainly called in to say that given the tragedy in Oklahoma, that unfortunately Obama has come out the box capitulating. He should have started a campaign on defining the two Republican senators of who they are and how they voted in the past, and exposing them for what they are, and also saying that.
Oh, he really said Joe Biden could beat Trump? He said that too? Lord of... No, I haven't... You mentioned him before, but I haven't watched him. Bernie Sanders is unpopular. Well, he's in the top 3 of the Democratic Party right now. And he's the most popular senator in the country, so... Facts don't care about your feelings, bruh.
For all you a-holes out there that hate big government, guess what? Who's going to come in and help you? But none other than big government. And I thought that back in the day when Obama got into office that he was going to be our Reagan and turning the big aircraft carrier that is this nation more towards a progressive slant. I didn't, of course I'm not crazy in thinking that we would get everything we want all in one president, but I thought he would just start changing the political, the philosophy or the talking points that were out there. But he failed on that completely. And just like this, he's not telling the people in Oklahoma.
I mean, look,
but they don't know their voting record.
I don't know that this is Obama's responsibility in this specific instance. In general, it would be nice that if he had provided at really any time other than when he was campaigning some broad rhetorical arguments for, and he's done that in certain moments. I have to concede during, in some speeches, but I'm over that. It's a failure, but look, I think what has to happen is, I can't wait to see what Tom Coburn. I think everybody should hold the line with this funding, and I can't wait for Tom Coburn to vote against disaster relief in his own state. And
there you go. And make him live up to his.
Absolutely, and I bet you he might. I think he will. I think he will.
Let me just say this one last thing. Yeah. I was completely against all libertarian callers, but given the genius and the beauty of that last caller, I am pro-libertarian. Let them come in, let them define themselves, and let them fall flat on their faces. This show is genius. Libertarians are awesome. More libertarians, more faces hitting the wall at 100 miles per hour. And I love the show, and thank you guys.
Thanks, Don.
I would just like to point out 2 things about that call. One was when you brought up the diarrhea thing, and he was in the clean water. He was like, "Well, it doesn't affect me. I got my own will."
Right.
Like
right,
what?
Right.
And then 2, the reason he called in was because a listener of this show left their local libertarian party, which I guess he was a part of, and said, "I don't believe in libertarian."
Yeah, that
because of the show.
Quite gratifying. That was quite gratifying. I hope. I hope John will call back in and make another case to try and get more of. He should actually. What should happen is John should have some more of his libertarian friends listen to the program to see if I can't convert more of them.
That's too funny. Yeah, no, Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton all over again. Like we all know this. Like it's weird that people don't know this. Let's see. Libertarian caller. My taxes don't go to war. You left-wing Limbaugh.
Speaking on the phone.
Oh, it's Jim.
Hello?
Hello. You come from 570. Where are you from?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, Pennsylvania. Who's this?
It's your favorite gadfly.
Oh, well, I have a number. What's your name?
Come on, Sam. You telling me you've forgotten? It's Jim.
Oh, Jim. Jim from Pennsylvania, of course. How are you, Jim?
I'm good. I just had a little question. Are you familiar with a website called PakistaniBodyCounts.org?
No.
No, it's a list of all the Pakistani civilians that have been killed in military action. And it's an interesting graph if you look at it. The number of civilians killed by drone strikes has increased dramatically since Obama took office. And that's just, again, Pakistan. That's just a fraction of the civilian deaths, not counting Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. So I've asked you this before, and you've dodged the question. I just want to know, straight up, how many people will have to be killed by Obama's military policies before you're finally willing to admit he's as bad as Bush?
Well, I mean, it's hard to make a calculation about, what. I mean, I don't know. One life is bad. Maybe it's as bad as 150,000 lives. I don't know. I mean,
so as long as less people are killed, you're okay with it?
Well, I mean, I definitely think less people dying is better than more people dying. I think no people should die. I think no people should die, particularly.
Exactly, but you voted. But you still pressured people to vote for Obama, even though you knew that people would die. So technically, that blood is on your hands.
I felt pretty comfortable that also people would die under Mitt Romney.
They would die under both, but still.
But what?
Remember how during the election you said that anyone who voted independent or third party, if they ended up getting Romney elected and he ruined Social Security and Medicare, that would be on them? By your logic, people who voted for Obama and gave him the authority to continue his military policies have the culpability for that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like I said, I
elected-
think prior to the election, Jim, that I think that we all have culpability. I also pay taxes, which pay for those drones. And I think even though I voted against George Bush, hold on for a second. Even though I voted against George Bush and agitated against George Bush, I also felt culpable in the deaths of hundreds, at least tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. Yes, I don't think you're innocent because you voted for Gary Johnson, if that's the question, Jim.
Sam, taxes are taken by force, Sam. It's not a willing decision.
Oh, really? Really? No, you have an option. You can go to prison. But I guess your freedom is more important than the lives of those Pakistanis. Is that what you're saying?
What did you say?
Your freedom, apparently, to you is more important than the lives of those Pakistanis.
Bullshit, Sam. I voted for the one candidate who wanted to end the war.
Yeah, but you still pay your taxes, Jim. You have a choice.
Actually,
I've
gotten refunds. I've gotten refunds for the last couple of years, so no.
Oh, okay. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
But once again, Sam, you prove that you are a fake progressive. You're a tool.
okay. Well, I appreciate the phone call. Is that it?
Yeah. Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Left wing
My
limbo.
friends from
Yeah, we did not hear this before, Murdoch. He just always says it. He just always makes that comparison. Let me see. Oh, you can't send links, Millennium Gamer? I still don't know why. Maybe I can. Maybe if you send it to me on Twitter, Millennium Gamer, maybe I'll be able to put it in the chat. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure. But this one's Libertarian Caller replace government with private militia pro bono lawyers. Yeah, you'll find it. You'll find just look up Lord of whatever.
rights? Who set up your property rights?
Who sets your property rights?
Yeah.
You're saying government determines what rights you have and don't, and without government, no one has any rights?
Well, I'm not saying that without government nobody has any rights, but certainly it's government who enforces those rights, and who helps structure society in such a way for those rights.
Right, but I mean, it is true that government currently may, in certain instances, defend property, although it also violates it as well.
Right.
But the fact that government I'm not denying that the government does many things which are useful. But I think it's a fallacy to say because government does X, only government can do X.
Well, we don't need to say
right?
X. All right, so who is it that is without coercion going to defend your property rights?
I hire someone and I say, if you defend me, I will pay you. People have security guards. There are mall cops.
Okay, so
I mean,
so only wealthy people who can afford paramilitary groups get their property rights defended. Is that what you're saying?
Now you're turning it into an emotional argument. Only
no,
rich people,
I'm just
I don't know
saying
why they would necessarily be so.
Well, how am I going to pay for this paramilitary group to protect my property rights unless I have money? I mean, I want to protect my my iPhone, but I don't have money to hire a security guard.
Mm-hmm. Well, so should government provide everything? So should only rich people be able to afford paper? Should only rich people be able to afford a phone? Unless you're going to take that argument to its logical conclusion that the government can provide everything, if there's one thing you don't want the government to provide, I can use that same argument to you and say, oh, so only rich people should be able to afford whatever it is, that one service that should be left to the market?
I'm not following what you're saying. You said to me, I said, who's going to protect your property rights? And you said, I can go out and hire somebody to protect my property rights. And I'm saying, well, what if I don't have the means in which to hire somebody to protect my property rights? How is that fair?
Should we have a market in food production, or should
answer my question?
I'm answering it. I am. Should government control the market? You go to a supermarket and they sell food. Should government say we are going to control the food supply? We're not going to let the market make food. We're going to monopolize the food
But I think
industry.
the government should regulate certain things about it. You see, you have to understand something, okay? I am not stuck in a rigid dogma. I actually look at the world and I respond to problems based upon some very broad notions of what I think will benefit the most amount of people in society. You are the one who has a rigid philosophy that says there can be no coercion whatsoever. And that's why you run into problems. That's why you can't answer my question. If property rights are so sacrosanct and you don't want government, you don't think government needs to be the only vehicle in which to protect those property rights, and you tell me that you can hire somebody to protect your property rights, I say to you, well, what about the person who can't afford to hire somebody, their own private police force for to protect their property rights? And your answer is what?
Well, you have lawyers who work pro bono. You have charitable organizations. Look, it's not.
So wait a second. Somebody comes to take my iPhone, and I say, "Hey, you can run away, but I'm going to sue you with a pro bono lawyer."
Pro bono Blackwater.
Well, first of all, I think if I commit an aggression against you, let's say I steal your phone, right?
Yes.
Well, you would be taken to court, and
But wait a second. Who's
who's
taking you to court? What coercive power is going to make me go to court?
Your phone,
I'm not going to go to court.
Huh?
I took your phone. You want me to go to court? No. Make me.
Okay, I'll make you.
How are you going to do that?
Huh?
How are you going to do that?
How am I going to do that? Well, obviously, against your will if you don't agree to it.
How?
Well, through the use of force.
Okay. Well, I mean, because I got news for you. Guess who I got here?
What?
I've got my
What do
own
you
little
mean?
private Blackwater. Screw you, buddy.
You got your what?
Tell it to my paramilitary.
You got your what?
Tell it to my paramilitary.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat it again?
Yes, tell it to my paramilitary. The point is this: what you're talking about is feudalism, and I don't think it would be very fun for you to live in a feudal world. That what you're promoting is feudalism. I get that you have some belief that we can live in a society where there would be no coercive power, but the reality is that you can't. I mean, the reality is that you can't.
But why do you think? Why do you think the government is going to give you justice? I mean, look at the recent Ethan
I
Couch
think that the
case.
government
This guy-
sometimes gives you justice, and that's why a lot of times I argue for more justice. But guess what? There is no world where you're going to go and there's just going to be justice. That only exists. I don't even know if they do TV shows like that because it would be pretty boring. But the reality is that's a fantasy land. You're in La La Land.
Holy shit.
That was a quick one. This one is Libertarian Debate Doctors Are Starving Edition.
Nice thing comes from my desire
thanks for
to
messages,
try and
guys. I'll check
unite
it out
the
later.
libertarian movement as well. And when I say that, I use the example of an elevator. I view that, we are now on the 100th floor of a skyscraper, and the elevator's on that 100th floor. It is crazy, out of control, monstrous government that tries to control everything you do. And we have some people down in the basement who think that's complete anarchy. All I say is let's move that elevator down and find out what makes the most sense. I mean, maybe it's the 50th floor, maybe it's a 20th floor. But at least moving the progression in the right direction is what I'm trying to accomplish. And so when you say it would be nice, I think that's what I'm thinking, is I'm looking at the real world of today. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, this is the reality of what we have today. This is where I believe we should probably want to go to make everybody a lot happier. And so, when I say it would be nice, I think I'm thinking about let's put the elevator on the 20th floor and see what happens.
All right,
I want to
okay.
clarify that.
Fair enough.
Now
All right,
back to medical.
Well, so just be specific of
Yes.
what the 20th floor is, because I think if we get down to your 0 floor, we have anarchy, and we have no taxation, and we're living in the feudal state, and it's maybe it's not quite Game of Thrones, but it's pretty close. But you want to take it to halfway there, and so specifically.
Are you getting a headache from this, sire? Sire?
I mean, if you have no plans for the medical profession, we don't have to spend
We've been doing this for weeks, so I can imagine everyone else's pain.
time on that. That's just your sort of like best case scenario where we have doctors, licensing themselves. But so let's say Gary Johnson become president. I mean, what do? Cut Social Security and Medicare? Because no.
No. What all Gary wants to do with that is to move it to the states to basically make it a better situation where it cuts the cost of the implementation and management of those programs. Now, Gary's
wait a
not
second.
for cutting safety net.
How would you cut the costs by having Social Security, and Medicare for that matter, which are incredibly efficient systems? I mean, 97 cents of every Medicare dollar goes towards coverage. How, if you made 50 agencies that had to check eligibility, that had to do all that stuff, how would that be more efficient than having at least one agency that then instructed people across the country? I mean, would it be efficient when, you moved from Arizona to Texas? That seems to me to be incredibly inefficient.
Yeah, Murdoch has been with us for a very long time. No, have we been doing this for months? Maybe 2 month and a half, maybe 2, but not that much. But still funny. It's still funny to me.
Well, let me ask you, Sam. aren't these infrastructures already in place in these states when it comes to dealing with things like Medicaid and their own types of public assistance that exist in those states? It seems like they already have those infrastructures, no?
They have information that is aggregated
For
on
some reason, my pen is not working. I have to reconnect it to figure out how.
federal level. But if you take out the federal aggregation of that, then these people have to do it, and they have to create all sorts of different type of coordinating with other states, right? Because I mean, then you need to coordinate going state to state if people move. You need to have presumably 50 different eligibility levels, right? Where there's no, I mean, or are you saying that we would still have a federal mandate, but the states have to do it as the feds want it? I mean, how?
Dude, this is just one session for you, dude. Like, we've been listening to those for like we were saying, like a month and a half. It gets pretty bad, dude. It gets pretty bad. Whereas to the point where some people are like, if a state votes for slavery, then I'm okay with it. Like, he doesn't advocate for slavery, but he's like, oh, if the states vote for it, then I'm okay. It's okay for like a business to like discriminate like against like black people from even entering the establishment if it's like, you know, it's just like a lot of weird shit, man. It's really weird, but it's still hilarious.
How would this work?
Not sure, but it seems to me like the states already deal with a lot of these things, and I think that when you have an infrastructure
people in
that's
the
closer
state,
to the I think when you have infrastructure that's closer to the people have more input in that infrastructure,
Well,
and that's why I believe more in the states than the federal government.
I mean, if you look at like the example, let's say the Medicaid expansion, right? There are a lot of states where you have literally hundreds of thousands of people who are being denied health insurance because of the state. I mean, for you, that's just an outcome of like, whoops, or what?
Excuse me?
I mean,
No, I think that's
how
what
do
the
you
courts are for. I mean, that's the thing. There has to be. I mean, that's why I believe in the courts, because they adjudicate disputes. And I think my big problem when it comes to regulation is that these people are making rules with the force of law, and they never receive one vote to do it. So I believe that violates the Constitution. That's another problem I have with it, in addition to the additional expense. It just seems to me like there are so many better ways of doing things, but growing a bloated federal government becomes just much more expensive. And then when you force people to pay money to support that system, which oftentimes harms them, I think that's a lot to ask.
Wait a second. So if we were to move, let's say, Medicare to the states, right? Mm-hmm. You're not talking about block grants. You're talking about they would raise the taxes. They would implement Medicare. Presumably, it would be different from state.
Yes, you do have free healthcare in your Finnish land, Murdoch. We know. Rubbing it in our American faces. Oh man. So I mean, if the states vote for it, it's okay. It's okay.
To state, right? Like some state would have, like, you can have it at 65. Some maybe you don't have it at all. Is that it? Or
as long as it's up to the people to decide.
Well, don't you think that there are instances where you have elected officials who, may decide they're not going to take, let's say, Medicaid funding, and then you've got hundreds of thousands of people, for example, who are denied health care. That's a sort of a tough luck scenario in your perspective.
I don't see that happening. I think.
Well, I mean, it's happening right now.
I really think that left to the free market to resolve things, I think that the ingenuity of people allows for better solutions.
Steve, that's happening right now in over a dozen states where Republican governors, and I think there's one Democrat too, I think, and Republican legislatures are denying people Medicaid because they didn't take the Medicaid expansion. That's happening right now, and there's no private solution for that.
Well, I mean, there could be. I mean, the private solution
really?
would be people. Of course, there could. There are
what
so many.
What would be
clinics.
the private solution for providing health care to the poorest people, or people living from 100% to 133% poverty?
Mm-hmm. Well, it'd be the same thing as pro bono legal. There'd be some pro bono.
Why doesn't
medical.
that exist now?
Well, I think because right now the doctors are starving because of the regulation they're dealing with now and the lawsuits and everything that's just destroying their
practices.
Doctors
are starving?
A lot of them are not doing well. Look at how more difficult it is now to get into your family doctor than it was 20 years ago.
Well, wait a
It's
second.
because they've had to increase their volume to such a high extent in order to cover the reduction in what they're earning and the offsetting additional costs of regulation and
Steve,
malpractice insurance.
With all due respect, let's start with malpractice insurance. I mean, we can compare states that have essentially outlawed malpractice tort cases going back to the courts in civil courts. We have states where they have minimized damages there, and insurance costs have made no difference. And we have the highest paid physicians in the world here. You'd be hard pressed to find any country in the world, I think, that has where doctors make more money. And so the private market has not been able to, and we're certainly no more regulated in terms of medicine than any other country. I mean, for gosh sakes, the rest of the world, where there's far more regulation and on doctors through single payer health insurance, or in some instances,
What up, Leon?
governments that
How you doing, man?
actually, run
What
the
happened, bro?
healthcare system.
Someone dunk you
I mean,
online?
so where are you getting this? What are you comparing this to?
It's a school
idea that
thing.
doctors
I can't
are
help you there,
starving,
dude.
and that's why they
Can't help you there. 4 + 4 = 8. That's 4 divided by 4 = 1. I'm done with math. I got my calculator, beach.
haven't created all these pro bono clinics for people who are living in poverty to get health care.
How much coffee do I drink? I don't. If I can skip coffee, I will. I'll have it maybe once a day in the morning, maybe, if I'm up for it, but not that often. If I don't have it, I can wake up by myself. I don't need it to like wake up. Like some people are like, I need my coffee. I need my coffee. I need my coffee. No, I'm like, oh yeah, I just wake up.
Well, I'm starving is probably an exaggeration. Yes,
Yeah.
some of them are doing very well.
The
but
average
reality
salary
is,
for doctors is over $200,000.
okay, but once again, when they go into private practice, it becomes a different situation where, and it's very hard to pinpoint exactly everything I'm discussing now when it comes to regulation, but I can say that the costs continue to climb. And this is where you have a problem when you bring too much government into it. They don't do what it takes to cut the costs of providing health care. They just want to fund it and pay the exorbitant cost to comply with
Medicare
regulation and
actually
lawsuits.
reimbursement rates are far lower than private insurance reimbursement rates because they serve 45 million Americans. They actually can have a better sense of what is efficient care and what's not. And in fact, that's the biggest complaint about that doctors have in Medicare is their reimbursement rates are actually a function of how efficient the care is. So it's the private market where you have doctors, the private insurance market is where they're getting more money. I mean, what you're saying does not add up. I mean, there's no reason now why, and I don't know what it is that we would get rid of that you think would open up the door for doctors to.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, Leon. Like I know some people have to drink coffee to feel good. Like I never did that. I was never that kind of guy.
Give all this pro bono work, but the more they get paid per hour, right? I mean, we've already established that that humans end up working in their own best interest. Well, if a doctor knows that they're going to make even more money per hour, aren't they going to be less inclined to give that hour away for free?
It depends.
This is
it
your
depends
daughter,
on the doctor.
and she just got
some
this.
will,
Hold on
some
one
won't.
second.
Oh boy.
I've got it.
But you've got hum. So
I had a problem on my computer. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think some will and some won't, and that's what a voluntary society is about. And I think that there are some people who really embrace the desire to help others, and some people who don't care.
Don't you think those people are doing that now?
I think they could probably do more.
Hey, it's Sam Cedar. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can.
Whew. Cinnamon coffee with Irish cream. Interesting. Do you like your coffee black, Leon? I want to gag every time I freaking have coffee that's black. Um, all right, so we have one more. This is quite a debate. Libertarian Talk with activist and presidential candidate Adam Kokesh. Adam Kokesh is like almost 2 hours. But this is new, so I guess let's check it out.
The destiny of America is always safer in the
Oval Office later, and he's really of Adam versus the man. And Adam, welcome to the program.
Ads.
Thank you very much, Sam.
All right. So, what's that? Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Just bear with us. This is a new. Okay, great. How do I get me out of there? You're not in the show. Okay, great. All right, terrific. All right. So, Adam, thank you for doing this. And let's just start with, and I've explained to everybody how this debate came about. I saw that you had questioned Steven Crowder, and somehow in the Steven Crowder, my pitch to him to debate me, you got wind of my libertarian debate challenge, and I remember back in the day watching some of your videos. I think I saw you like at the maybe the Lincoln Memorial.
Dancing at the Jefferson Monument.
Oh, the Jefferson Monument, yeah. And I remember, appreciating it. I'm not a fan of libertarianism, but I appreciate a certain amount of anti-authoritarian authority impulse. I have
Cannabis
a little bit of that
mocha.
myself. All right, but let's just start
Sounds
with
good
this.
to me.
And we can take this anywhere you want. We haven't really discussed beforehand what we would be talking about. But why don't you just express, because in my experience, there's a lot of different types of libertarians out there. Why don't you just express what ilk of libertarian you are and what that means?
Sure, and let me just say thanks again for the opportunity, and thanks to the people on Twitter who brought us together around this. So first, very broadly, libertarian could just mean anyone who believes in freedom. And I generally like that we have that inclusive definition. But to me, freedom is something very specific, and you can define the word freedom. And as I do, freedom is what you have when no one is forcing their will upon you in any way, when you have the ability to exercise your rights without any forceful interference. And I describe myself as a voluntarist, specifically as a type of libertarian, if you will. And that just means that I believe all human relationships, all human interactions should be voluntary. That is, free of force and fraud and coercion. And when you apply that to government, you see what government is today, that it's a coercive monopoly based on a territorial claim, that it claims that it has a sovereign right within a certain geographic area. That's how we think of the government today. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about, a family government or a community government or a corporate government or a organizational government or your club's government. Nothing like that. We're talking about the sovereign institution. The government is a coercive monopoly, and that means it's fundamentally illegitimate. It's not based on an ethical premise. And so the question that I see is most important is, how do we move past this as a species right now, this paradigm of violence and coercion, and achieve a voluntary society, one that's harmonious and peaceful and much more productive as a result in terms of meeting real human needs. So what I want to do is create a world in which human problems are addressed with peaceful cooperation rather than a coercive central authority.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty comprehensive definition. Let me ask you just a couple of questions so that I'm just clear on some stuff. So we start with this premise of freedom is this notion of you're free from essentially other people's will, as it were, right? And
it's universal, the ideal of universal nonviolence.
well, okay. I mean, but what about the notion of like you said this is all a means in which to meet human needs, right? I mean, is this ideology or philosophy? I'm not sure which you consider it. Is it a means to meet those human needs, or is it irrespective of meeting those human needs?
You know, it's a good question. I've never heard it asked exactly in those terms, because you could describe it in both ways. It's a fundamental truth that is how we determine consistent ethics. What and to sort of when we ask the question, what is the right thing to do? Is it ever right to use violence, to use force, or the threat of force against someone who's acting peacefully? And then you go, well, gee, those principles lead us to a practical benefit as well. But you could start from the premise of how do we maximize the benefit and then seek the principles.
Well,
either way.
wait. No, but that's different, because it's quite possible, it seems to me, right? In fact, I think it's my argument that following those libertarian principles that you're talking about as their practice does not meet human needs. Now, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, okay, well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But when I am confronted with the idea of either hewing to my, what you call a fundamental truth, I would argue it's not, but what you call a fundamental truth, when I am confronted with the idea of hewing to my fundamental truth versus data, let's say, that show it's not meeting human needs, which one wins out for you?
Sure. Well, you might be looking at this from a framing that's just so different from mine. Maybe I can kind of bring that together first, because what I'm suggesting here is that nonviolent cooperative solutions are on the whole better than violent solutions. So it's not just.
I think everybody would agree with that. I mean,
right.
But
yeah, he's like, peace is better than violence. It's like, okay, he's more, I guess, like well spoken, but it's just, what are you saying?
The question is.
Look at no, I'll get to the question specifically, because you can look at that data and say, well, good things have come out of these violent means. Government has done good things. Government has produced certain goods and services that maybe humanity would not have produced otherwise at the time. And I would make the case then that represents a misallocation of resources in terms of meeting real human needs as efficiently as we can. So there's that data can't really compare to what is the universal principle. And I think if you really look at the data, you don't challenge, you never come to the conclusion, well, sometimes violence is the only way. And we're talking about social organization, not cases of individual defense. I believe in being able to use violence for self-defense. But, we talk about social organization. You never come to the conclusion, well, gee, yeah, I guess if we apply just a little violence like this, it's all going to be better.
Well, now, to be clear, when you say violence, you're just simply saying the state's monopoly of force, right? So just to be clear with people, for instance, I mean, I think I can come up with one very just obvious to me example of where those things do come into conflict, right? Like,
if there's anything I learned from listening to libertarians debate, they usually have a breaking point. So usually it's in the it could be in the beginning where like, oh, it's a good conversation, and it goes quickly off the rails. I don't think it's going to happen with this guy, but I've said this before and I've been proven wrong. So we'll see. Let me see the comments. There's someone that says a libertarian debate starts at 30. So I guess that's when it gets good. I don't know. But regardless, let's see. Oh, we're in 38, so we're past that. Oh, okay. He's just pointing out when the debate happens. Okay. Well, never mind. So we'll see. We'll see if it goes off the rails, but usually is the case.
Let's say, for instance, like health, right? I mean, health, I think we would agree, is a basic human need. Vaccinations. Now, maybe not all vaccines, but let's say polio, right? Like,
sure.
If we don't have everyone vaccinated, and the government is the one that says it's the law, you need to be vaccinated, or you need to be vaccinated before you go to school, you need to be vaccinated, that, just to be clear, by your definition, is a violent act by the government, right? It's saying the law is you got to get vaccinated. That, if I'm not mistaken, is a violation of the non-aggression principle. It is a curtailment on freedom.
Well,
but that is a human, I mean, that health is essential. Those two principles that you have, the idea of meeting human needs and freedom, come into conflict there. And I guess my question to you is, when that rubber hits the road, which one wins out for you?
Yeah, no, and if you let me here, it's a great example to examine these different worldviews, the challenge of vaccination. And the libertarian worldview allows for people to have whatever collectives they want voluntarily. It's not necessarily an individualist philosophy. I think it's often misrepresented as that. It could be just as well described through the relationships of human beings being voluntary rather than coercive. So in the case of vaccinations, you don't have a right to decide for someone else what goes in their body, what vaccinations are good for them. You do have a right to decide who you want to associate with and what collectives you want to form. So if you want to come together and form a community where you say, we are going to do these vaccinations,
all right, Sayer.
And if you don't
Thanks
have
for
these
hanging out,
vaccinations,
buddy.
you're not welcome
Really
in our
appreciate
community, or your kids aren't welcome to come to our school. You can do that, but you have to give people the ability to choose for themselves and to opt out. So in the case of if it was the United States federal government, saying if you're not vaccinated, you're not allowed to live in the United States, you could look at it two ways. You could say they're forcing the actual vaccination on people, or more accurately, philosophically, they are claiming to own as their property all of the territory that is the United States, and saying if you live in here, you have to play by our rules that are going to be forced on you, and that's not legitimate.
So if I hear you correctly, then you don't have a problem with the government's monopolization of force as long as they give everybody the option who doesn't want to abide by it to leave the country.
Essentially, yeah, you could say that would make something voluntary. If the absolute right to individual secession was respected, that would be a big step in making the government an ethically legitimate institution.
But don't people have the right now to renounce their citizenship in the United States and leave the country?
Oh, you can leave, but you can't claim your property and secede.
Well, so you're saying you want your house and to be not part of America.
Right. But, I mean, if I own it, wouldn't I have?
You know how polio works, right? For instance, I mean, you know how disease works. Like, you could be in your house. I mean, there's a notion of herd immunity. I mean, it's just, that's not plausible.
Right. And when there are things like that where humans should come together and should apply these great scientific principles, that's fine. We should just do it with an ethical basis and say we're not going to force these on it.
Well, but for herd immunity to work, everybody needs to get vaccinated.
That's just the way it works.
You have a right to kick someone out of the herd if the herd is, if you define the herd as a collective of private property. If someone says, I refuse to get vaccinated and I'm going to be a threat to you, you can say, okay, fine, but now you have to stay isolated on your own property and you can't come near any of us. There's no such thing as a public right to. You don't have a right to expose someone else to polio. Like, just because we don't want the government or any other authority to force vaccinations on someone doesn't mean that we want people to be able to force a disease on someone. That's worse.
So I'm confused now. So if I want to have mandatory polio vaccinations, you can opt out, but the option that you have is to just stay in your house and never come out.
Well, when you say mandatory, what do you mean? Do you mean for your city, for your state, for the entire country?
The entire country, let's say.
Excuse me?
Let's say the entire country.
Yeah, so if the federal government decides, hey, we're going to force a vaccination on everybody, and California says, hey, you know what? That's it. That's the last straw for us. We're going to secede. Yeah, I think the federal government has to respect that right of that separate collective to assert their autonomy and can't invade the sovereign country of California and force the polio vaccine.
All right. Well, let's not get. I don't want to get worry about California. I want to talk about Adam Kokesh. You say that there's a federal vaccination. There, in this instance, there is no federal vaccination law, but all 50 states require, all right, vaccination.
No, there's a reason. It'd be really to impose.
What's that?
It'd be very difficult to impose.
It would be very difficult to impose. But I'm just trying to give an example of like where those two things come in conflict and how they're resolved. Let's move on to the notion of property rights, because my sense is that, I mean, you were talking about, you don't have a problem with corporate governance. You're not talking about corporate governments and
right. Well, I use the word corporation there because that's how we think of large company collectives. But in a world where there's no corporatism, where the government gives no special privileges to corporations, you would just have companies.
Right. And what about, let's say, the mail service, like the postal service, right? Like, how does that just doesn't exist in your world? I mean, could it, like the idea of like U.S. Postal, like the U.S. Postal Service, for instance, if we were to, presumably you would abolish it because it's a government institution. And what would happen then? People, is it your presumption that the market would take care of it, or just that like you're shit out of luck if you live out in the rural parts of the country or something?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. We already have FedEx and UPS.
There's a lot of places they won't deliver to, and they certainly won't deliver a letter for 42 cents.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, and you presume that government is the solution. As you say, you want to know about Adam Kokesh. Well, Adam Kokesh lives down 3 miles of dirt road, and USPS does not deliver to where I am, but FedEx usually does. So, I mean, already we have a better voluntary solution than the coercive solution. But bigger picture, I want to point out because
wait a second, but it's simply, I mean, that may be the case on your private road. But the reality is that there's a lot of places that FedEx and UPS won't deliver, period. And the U.S. Postal Service goes a lot of places that they won't. And will, in terms of a letter, a 42-cent letter. Now, yes, you can buy something for, $15, $20 on Amazon or whatever, and they'll deliver it to you. But in terms of a postal service set up to bind the nation and provide communication, it's simply just a fact that the U.S. Postal Service does it better than any private entity ever would, because it's not profitable to do it in certain areas. They are statutorily required
to provide postal service within a certain distance of everybody in the country.
Well, there's some legitimate points you make in there, but I don't want to bind the country in a sort of isolating communication system. I would want the world to be able to be bound by this communication capability. And if anything, the market has already.
The U.S. mail goes to around the world too.
Right. No, I know. But you say that I would just abolish the postal service, and that's not necessarily the case. Just because it's a government agency. For example, like the VA, I'm a veteran myself. I was in Fallujah in 2004 with the Marines. And my platform as president, if I may back up for a second, if you're going to introduce me as a libertarian presidential candidate, I have to point out that a part of me really dies inside every time I'm introduced as that, because you have to be a psychopath of some kind, at least, to want to be president of the United States, to say, I want to have this authority and this power over so many people. I think there has to be something really wrong with you. My platform is based on turning the presidential election into a referendum on whether or not the federal government should be allowed to exist at all. So I'm not going to be putting on the ring of power. I'm throwing it into the fire right away. I resign on day one. My platform is to serve as a bankruptcy agent of the federal government and proceed and be able to proceed through a peaceful, orderly, responsible dissolution that would leave us with 50 independent states. So
what court?
Some institution of value.
What court's going to oversee the bankruptcy?
What court?
Yeah.
The American people. You don't need a court to oversee a bankruptcy necessarily.
Well, you got to protect. I mean, what do you mean by the bankruptcy? You mean like protection from the creditors, sell off the assets? Like what
right.
Under what auspices?
Right. So the platform for this is going to be laid out in detail long before the election ever happens. So the American people will know exactly what they are voting for. And in that sense, we're disowning the illegitimate debt. Most of the national debt, as I think you would agree, the debt to foreign governments and foreign banks and foreign corporations, or American corporations even, is not a legitimate debt. In fact, it's intergenerational child abuse to force your children to pay for stuff that they never had a say in. So we get to go in and
you're
say,
talking about, wait. Are we talking about Social Security here?
No, well, that would be included in some ways. It depends on how you want to see how the investment into Social Security is, how fair you would decide that is. But I
now you would do all this unilaterally. Is that it? Like, well, I mean, no, I guess listen. I mean, I'm being half facetious because obviously, like, I don't, with all due respect, I don't think you're going to win. But and we may not come to this. But I guess my point is that like, the idea of having no central authority, no authority that we all agree and enter into some type of social contract about, whether it's simply by birth, right? We get certain rights by birth and certain advantages.
You would still, if you want a central authority, you could have it at the state level after we dissolve the federal government.
Well, why is the state level necessarily better than the federal level?
Well, how big? I mean, let me ask you, Sam, as someone who believes in the coercive institution of the state, what is the ideal level of size of that collective? Should it be city and community, or county, or state, or something the size of the United States? Should it be something the size of Canada, or should it be global? And why?
I think there's an argument that we would want, something a little bit more global, but I think I certainly wouldn't want to. I think the federal government is an important institution in this country. Largely not so much theoretically, but largely because of just what we've seen in this country. I think the existence of a federal government is why we have, as poorly as we've executed, at least the aspiration for integrated schools, for some measure of equality. I think we can see it in the context of providing things like health care and Social Security insurance. I mean, is there an argument to break up America into 3 separate countries? I don't know, maybe, but the GI Bill, the VA, I mean, I think the idea that you could move from state to state and know that there's at the very least some measure of consistency because available to you through the VA. I mean, I think the VA is a great example of an institution that could not exist except for on that scale.
Okay. There's so much in there to respond to, and you point out a lot of the good things that the federal government has achieved. But and especially in terms of social progress there and respect for rights. But then you look at the issue of slavery. Just go back and say, well, we're the only country. This is the only country in the world that needed a war to abolish slavery and didn't even do a very good job of it. So in that sense, it hasn't been a great track record of accomplishing these things. And I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it hasn't done great things. Generally speaking, I look at those examples. I think that's more the government taking credit of things for things that the people deserve.
I think we're gonna listen to like 8 more minutes of this. It's like the 52. It's like a 2 hour and 30 minute debate. Actually, I think it's another. I think it's an hour and. I think it's another 30 minutes because I think it's like the main show on here. But at an hour, I think we're gonna cut it off. So like in a few minutes from now, and then we'll end the stream. I still have a little bit of a headache, and I just want to make sure it's not gonna get worse.
A lot more credit for, but I'm saying that things could be better just because we've used violence to get to this point. For example, I'm a vegan. And a lot of people making the case for eating meat will say, well, humanity, if we didn't kill animals when we were hunters and gatherers, we would never have had the brain explosion and evolved to where we are today. And I go, yeah, sure, that's true. That I'm not arguing history here. I'm just saying, look at where we are now. Look at these ethical principles. Look at how we can apply them to make the world a better place. And you go, yeah. There's some really compelling reasons that we need to examine the fundamental premises of government.
Now, on some level, was not the South using that right that you talked about of succession? And I guess, so the federal government had two choices there, right? It's either you can secede, and the slavery would exist in those southern states, whatever that country would be called. The Confederacy, and in the Union of the United States of America, we wouldn't have slavery. I'm not. Look, I'm not,
because eventually the Confederacy or the Confederate states would have ended slavery as well as a practice, and for the people in the North who wanted to end.
You think there would have been a gentle unwinding of that?
Certainly more gentle than a war, yeah, and it wouldn't have been gentle. Slavery was a brutal institution that needed to be ended.
How do you imagine that would have ended? Let's say they just did secede, and it was a separate country.
How did it end in every other country in the world? In the United States, it would have been very easy to allow runaway slaves to come to the northern states. It would have been relatively easy to purchase them, to encourage that, to change the economic incentives for the southern institutions that depended on slavery. The invention of the cotton gin obviously drastically reduced the need for human labor. There were lots of ways that slavery was abolished in other countries that would have worked just fine in the United States.
How many years would you imagine it would have taken for slavery to end? And then how many more years? The rollout of technology, a concerted effort for people to buy freed slaves from the North. Then we start getting into the late 1800s. Presumably, the South is going to be a little bit upset that across the border, their former, that this country is now starting to welcome in dissidents, I guess, right?
Sure.
Now we start getting into the early 1900s. I'm just saying that, like, the assumption that everything would have taken care of itself and everything would have been
that's not.
What's that?
It's not that it would have taken care of itself. It would have required a significant social effort as it did. That social effort would have been much better manifest along ethical grounds than along the grounds of starting a war.
Hey, I can't hear what you're saying, Michael. All right. Well, all right. So eventually, slavery would have ended by itself, right? Is that the point?
Sorry, say again, please.
Eventually, if we had allowed the South to secede, it would have resolved itself, and presumably, these generations of people who had spent another decade or two, maybe some quasi years of would have. I mean, I think the situation for literally millions of former slaves and then ongoing slaves would have been worth. Michael wants me to mention Haiti, but I mean, I think like there's plenty of, I think, just sort of rational assessment of that may have been problematic. I'm not promoting the idea of war, but the South, I don't think, was in a huge hurry to give up slavery. Now, maybe they eventually would have. I presume by now, I would like to think that they would have. But I just don't see the evidence that necessarily you're going to get something better with a smaller form of government. I mean, surely you've lived in small towns. You know, I've lived in very small towns. The level of corruption there is as big as anywhere. In some respects, it's even deeper. People who grab that power there do so as a way because they can genuinely influence their own person.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, how would, like, that was a weird statement about slavery. It would just end on its own. Ooh, that's a little weird. Yeah, he's like, oh, America had a war, but like, there's other ways. You know, how did it end in other countries? Like, I don't know the history of, you know, other places that how they ended slavery, but I can't imagine it was all like peaceful and, you know, bunny rabbits and fairy dust. You know, you found a cyber. Yeah, I feel like what do you need surgery on, Cyber Walrus? What's going on? What is happening, bro?
Outcomes, but let's go back to the notion of.
Hold on. If I may, you raised like two separate points. I'd like to respond to there. First, my reading of the history of the Civil War, and I don't pretend to be any historical expert, but seems to include a lot of negative consequences in the Jim Crow South and all of the lynchings and negative consequences that followed the Civil War for a lot of people, as is true about the aftermath of every war, especially in the case of the Civil War with the amputees. But if you look at the bigger dynamics, there were a lot of other problems. My reading of the history, again, not as an expert, makes it clear to me that a nonviolent solution would have been better for everyone in the long run to the Civil War, looking at the problem of slavery. In the question of small towns versus
I could
big
tell
towns,
you that Lincoln did try to buy the slaves.
Oh, your tonsils just moved? Oh, man, that's rough. It's a pretty standard procedure, but hopefully everything goes well. Keep us updated.
You know that, right? You know that Lincoln did offer that to buy the slaves, essentially. I mean, that's
I'm sorry, I missed that part of the story.
Oh, well, all right. Well, like you say, you didn't. You should look into the attempts by Lincoln to actually to do that in terms of economically, and I guess you could argue that the North should have just let the South secede. Maybe there would have been a slavery. I'm sorry?
But hold on. Lincoln actually offered to buy every individual slave in the South in order to prevent the war from happening?
Well, I don't think he did it by individual. I think the idea was, here's a lot of cash.
Does he think that slavery was not violence?
Well, no, he said slavery was violence. But no, you should look into that. There was exactly attempts to buy the federal government to essentially, here's lump sums. I mean, I don't know if he was going to go around and go each individual slave, but I think the idea was, here are massive payments so that you will give up slavery. And that was
research on that.
Yes, no, you should.
So,
but
small towns versus big towns, you're absolutely right to point out that small governments still have corruption. Small local governments don't have an NSA or a CIA or an FBI or a drug war or start wars.
Wow.
And lose trillions.
They do have a drug war. They do have a drug war. They don't have an NSA or a CIA. They would end up building their own.
Come on, without
part of the reason.
Listen,
part of the reason. Listen, New York City, right, had its own little CIA. You know that. They literally they were sending people as far afield as New England to go and spy on Muslims. Cities can do it. And in the absence of a federal government, I can assure you they will. The reason why they don't have those now is because the federal government has that. And the federal government says, you can't compete with us on this. They allowed New York City to do that, but you're going to get that. I mean, it's just going to be, they're going to know everybody's name. That's the only difference. You look at Ferguson, right?
Thanks for bringing out more of the evils of government for me, Sam.
Well, listen, I'm not arguing that there's no bad parts of government. I'm not arguing that there aren't parts of government that I would like to curtail or diminish. What we're arguing. What if I told you there was a way to keep all the good parts and get rid of all the bad parts? I would say you haven't told me yet. I'm open to that. What is it?
Okay, well, it's that people are still able to come together in voluntary ways to form the collectives to do all the good things that you want government to do. If you want a government welfare system, fine, you just can't steal from people in order to get it. People can still pool their resources and get that. You want a community.
Wait, what do you mean by steal? Let me just get clear. You consider taxation.
You can have that as long as you don't force it on anybody.
So, all right. Give me an example of a country with 100 million people where you do that. And by steal, you mean tax, right?
That was a perfectly timed ad placement.
Right, because taxation is theft.
Right.
Taxation is theft.
What country? Where do we see an example of what you're talking about? A totally voluntaristic country, and maybe you can't do it on that scale, that does not have a central authority, and that everything they do is done with the consent of everyone else in that community. Sure. I've never even heard of like communes where there aren't rules.
Sure. Well, there was a point in human history where slavery was the norm. And if you said, hey, without slavery, who's going to pick the cotton? We've never had a society that exists without slavery. That's not an argument for keeping slavery going. Similarly, when you see that the current status quo of the world, of statism, of turning to coercive monopolies to address social problems is wrong, you do what you can to move past it based on principle.
But Adam, I'm not saying that because it hasn't existed, that's proof that it cannot exist. I'm saying that's a piece of evidence. But I mean, I could, saying that because there was a time where slavery was a norm and we ultimately got rid of it is not, that those are not analogous. I'm not saying, hey, there was a time where humans couldn't fly, so maybe someday we'll be able to fly. I mean, that's not the argument I'm making. I'm simply making, you're trying to premise, to offer the notion that we can have a society of 300 million people, or let's say, I don't know, you want to say New York City, just 1 million people.
World, 7
million people, where...
Billion with a B.
7 billion people, where everybody just agrees to all the rules, and there's no material conflicts about how society is going to operate, and there's no one entity that has a monopoly of authority to adjudicate these differences. That to me seems fantastical. And here's the thing.
You're misrepresenting something. You're misrepresenting something very important. Because when you say all rules, you're still in this current paradigm of thinking of like uniformity of a sort of flat texture of society, when in a free world there are differences among different groups of people in different communities. So we don't have to agree on all the rules globally. We only have to agree on one rule, and that's you own yourself and I own myself, and on ethical grounds.
What about property rights? What about property rights?
Right. Well, I generally believe in the Lockean concept of property rights. This seems to be the same one that's in line with this ethical concept of self-ownership. Of course, it's subjective based on how much labor mixing with natural resources qualifies you to own something.
Yeah. What if I don't?
There's not a subjectivity in that.
What if I don't?
What if you don't?
Yeah. What if I come from, let's say, a tradition of, let's say, Native American tradition of that does not recognize the property rights in a Lockean fashion? How do we resolve that?
Well,
you have a house. I walk into the house. I look around. I'm like, I'm going to sleep here tonight. How do we resolve that?
Well, I think generally speaking, we respect the right of ownership of a domicile, of a home, of a place to be able to protect from the elements. But no, it comes down to being able to.
I don't accept that. What do we do about it? I don't accept that.
I'm going to defend my home against intruders.
Wait, what? You're not going to get you're going to initiate force against me?
Well, when I believe that I'm defending my property and I'm asserting that I have a right to own that, and you have violated my property, then that would be the act of aggression.
I assert that you don't have a right to own that property.
Well, I would hope that we could find a nonviolent way of resolving that.
You just told me I wasn't doing anything violent to you, man. I just came into your house. I was going to take it. I was going to sleep, and you just told me you were going to beat me up.
Well, I'm gonna ask you to leave. I'm gonna defend my home by force if necessary.
What do you mean your home?
I'm not getting that here.
Wait, what do you mean your home? I don't even get that. Where I come from, my people, we don't have your home. It's everybody's home. I'm going to sleep here tonight because I need to sleep, and you're gonna.
There's universal reality of the human condition of being an independent consciousness in your own body that comes with it a certain concept of ownership, that you own yourself.
I know you own you, but this is a house. It's not a you. It's not alive. It's the land. It's part of.
Well, let me ask you: if I walk up to you and I say you don't own that shirt, and I start ripping that shirt off you, what are you going to do?
I'm going to call the police.
Okay. So you have an agreement with someone else to do exactly what I would be doing for myself for you. That's fine.
But wait a second. I don't have a non-aggression principle. I'm not espousing. But wait a second. I acknowledge that you could come up and grab my shirt, and that's why I subscribe to the idea that we as a society need to provide a monopoly of authority to the state. And that comes with a lot of conditions in my mind.
Right.
And there may be disagreements about how that relationship works. But fundamentally, I understand that because you and I may have a different concept of who owns this shirt, that I need to subscribe to an authority that will adjudicate it. And you don't. You don't think that we need a third party to adjudicate it, but at the same time, you're also telling me that, see, from my perspective, you're arbitrarily drawing a line, and that is property rights exist. Now, it's one thing to say, like, okay, as a human being, freedom, okay, that doesn't implicate anybody else, but it's the moment you draw a line around something and say, this is mine too, not just this human body that I take with me, but this other stuff is mine. Well, then you're implicating the rest of us because it's not an infinite resource, and it's not one that is portable with yourself. You're deciding property rights are okay, and that doesn't make any sense. Based on what? That taking property is in and of itself a violent, aggressive act because you are saying that I deem this area to be off limits to you.
So this is based on the idea that as an individual human being, we all own ourselves.
Right.
And as human beings on this planet, we have a right to equitable access to natural resources. Now, it sounds like you're scared almost of giving up all of the securities and protections provided by the current system and the status quo. And that makes sense. A lot of people feel that. But if you step back and you look at all of the problems facing humanity today, you look at the violence that's done in the world today, and you look at the violence that's been done over the course of human history, how humans have died by each other's hands. It's very conservative to estimate that even today, 90+% of the violence and coercion in the world is done in the name of governments. And it's really heartless to say, well, because I can't figure out this situation or this abstract situation or this scenario or this concept of property rights. And Sam, you are absolutely right to point out that without a government, people coming together peacefully will have to come up with better mechanisms to solve these conflicts. It's not going to be automatic. It's not just poof, government's gone and everything's, better. No, absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is that when we identify the unethical grounds, the unethical premises of an institution, we have a moral imperative to try to see how we move past those. And I understand that you.
I would. I mean, but we haven't. See, you and I have not agreed on that ethical problem. I mean,
okay.
you.
This conversation is really interesting, and by interesting, I mean I want to continue to listen to Sam destroy this dude, because he's pretty much saying, like, no government, people come together, we'll figure it out. What? It's pretty much like asking, like, oh, let's have The Walking Dead without the zombies, and let's just have people just figure it out, and we'll do it. We'll do it better. Ugh, what the fuck? How do people listen to this shit? Now my head hurts more. Shit. But we're gonna end the stream here, guys. It's already 12:30. I wanna rest a little bit because I wanna make sure I feel better. So tomorrow is today. Oh my god. It's Thursday. Hopefully we'll wrap up the rest of the commissions. And maybe like try animating some of them. And then we'll continue some libertarian stuff. Sam's buying this guy? Yeah, he's totally buying the guy. Sam's buying the guy? I get it. People will figure it out. Just like put people back to the Stone Age, and then we'll bring up like rules and a Bill of Rights and things that we've already done in the past again, and then we'll just like live like that for decades, and then have people see like, oh, we need to get rid of government again and figure it out. Like, what? This is like Terminator, where like you go back in time and you cause the thing that you were trying to prevent. What? What? Oh my god. Alright, guys. Gonna end the stream here. Enjoy your nights. Murdoch, enjoy your morning. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully finish this stuff out. And yeah. Have a good one, guys. Peace.